Goddess Queen Jamila. Nice to meet you. And I'm so excited that you're joining me today. I wanted to just start with the same questions that I usually do, which is you tell me your name and then just give me a little bit about your background. Like give me, who you are, background, where you come from, etc.
Um, well, my spiritual name is Akua Divine.
Mm-hmm.
My birth name is Elena Carter. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make that difference because even with that, it kind of shows you how I just um went through a awakening. If you can say that. But I'm born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina. Um, my mother is Panamanian,
Mm-hmm.
and she moved to South Carolina when she was 7 years old. Um, she met and married my father, who's from Hopkins, South Carolina, and they were in their early 20s. So I was actually raised Catholic and Baptist. My mother was Catholic. My father, of course, being from the country, was Baptist. So yes.
Now, in that same spirit, tell me how you identify, because obviously Panamanian is one element, then you have Southern as well, being from South Carolina and Black American or African American. How do you identify?
I identify as African American. I think I would have claimed Panamanian more if we were taught the language. They did not, my mom and grandma and great aunties and everybody, unfortunately, did not teach us Spanish. They only spoke in Spanish when they wanted the children to not know what was being said. So it's pretty sad, but it is what it is. So now my brother claims Panamanian all day. Like he's younger than me and he has the Panamanian flag on his Instagram and everything, but it just, I always consider ourselves just, black people.
Right, right, right.
Mhm.
Now, tell me a little bit about let's do it in reverse. Tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about what your beliefs are presently. You talked
Mhm.
about a renaming, versus a a given name, and
Mhm.
this Akua is usually something that I see in West Africa. So,
Mhm.
give me a little bit of information about like how you identify spiritually or religiously now, and then let's reverse it and kind of go back from there.
Well, since my early 20s, I was introduced to Ifa. So I began at that time venerating my ancestors. Um, and I'm 42 now. So this whole journey, well, now I focus on ancestor veneration and I do practice Ifa as well. And also just learning more about what it is to be a woman, what it is to be divine feminine. Um, and that's where I am currently. And I'm sure I will stay there. Not to say I won't evolve into more, but though that is the core of my practice, ancestor veneration and Ifa.
Perfect. So more of a indigenous approach to spirituality. That's perfect. And
Absolutely.
then African centered. So you
Mhm.
said in your early 20s. Tell me about I guess the who, what, and why. Like
Mhm.
maybe who introduced you to um ancestral veneration.
Mhm.
What did that process look like, and why did it appeal to you? Like what 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 was it about this practice um that made you transition?
Well, in Colombia, we have an elder in the community that has been in the community for decades. And his name is Kuru, Elder Kuru. He was, he was, I don't want to say the originator, but he was the one that was representing African culture in the community in many different facets. He had stores all over. Um, Columbia. He still does actually, and he was the first person, one of the first people that I saw that had this alternative way of thinking. So in my early days as a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, I would go in his store and was introduced to many different books and concepts and conversation. He was the one who influenced me to become vegan at that age. Started my locks at that age. I don't have locks now, but I did for 20 years. Um, and so he was that example that was set. Um, it appealed to me because it was us, it was, how FUBU means for us, by us. It was just that recognition there that appealed to me, and I started the health food journey then, and I was in a health food store and I saw a flyer for a woman offering Reiki, and that was the first I've ever heard of that. So I got Reiki 1 from a beautiful woman, Dr. Natalie Washington Week, and she turns out was Oshun priestess. So she was my first godmother, and she introduced me to ancestor veneration. And I had my very first ceremony, which helped me begin to commune more with my ancestors.
I'm so curious about all of this because and I have not we haven't gone through the childhood portion yet. But I'm curious because it seems as though there was a level of willingness that you had to it that seems like I don't know if it's the way you're describing it. It seems very easy. And I'm wondering now I have to ask you about your childhood and how you grew up because you said you had a Catholic mother and a Baptist father.
Mhm.
So tell me about what messaging you had learned about maybe indigenous practices or African spirituality. Like, were these positive messages or is this completely like are you just at 20 you were just completely opposite of everything that you had been taught? Tell me about this. What were how did you grow up? Like what were the messages about indigenous spirituality or African spirituality?
I don't know if I had any messages per se. Well, I take that back. Um, when I got a little older, my great aunt and my grandmother, they would, but this was after I kind of got more spiritual. They would talk about Obia, and they called me Obia woman because I always had my incense. I just, I don't know, but uh, to go back to your original question about childhood, it was I don't think I got any negative messages about indigenous spirituality. We went to church, we went to Sunday school. I went to church with my dad's mom, went to Sunday school. Um Christening, all those, all I went through all the normal rites growing up in church, and it was just normal. It was a part of life. But as I grew up, I became the opposite. I absolutely became the opposite. I absolutely became the black sheep. And it just happened. But I was so curious. I was just curious. And it started out with African centered study, Francis Cress Welsing. Um, um, what was the first book I read? I'm trying to recall. It'll come back to me. Anthony Browder was the author.
Absolutely. Yes.
So that's where I started. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Mhm. So, okay, so a couple things came up. The first thing is how could you be a black sheep if this was always like greenlit in your family? Because when you say black sheep, that's usually
Mhm.
someone who is ostracized and cast out. So we gotta unravel that, because if they didn't have anything like, against it, if there was no resistance with that, then tell me about the black sheep portion of it. What part of it was ostracized? And then the other question I have is about you being introduced, you said, to African study.
Mhm.
And was that, I want to know, where was that? Was that in college? Was that in high school? Did you have a friend or a partner or relationship that brought you into
Mhm.
reading this, and or was your curiosity in existence um before you had the resources and you had to go digging for it? Like, I want to know about those two things. Tell me about the first thing, the black sheep portion. Explain that, if they was
The
cool.
the black sheep stuff came after. 'Cause when I was growing up, of course, I was just, I was practicing what the family practiced. So the everything as far as black sheep came after. Once I was 20 and I changed my eating and I locked my hair and I had my incense all the time and I had not necessarily tarot cards, but oracle cards. Um my family didn't understand. They did not understand. And at that time, they didn't try to understand. It was more like, what is she doing? My brother, he would say, oh, she's Muslim. And nothing is wrong with that, but that wasn't where I was. So it was a lot of things that happened. And I would say my mother's mother was more open, but my mother was very, very, very religious. We butt heads all the time. um and she even burned some of my sacred items. Like, she was very headstrong. So yes, the black sheep, you know, it came later. It definitely came later. Um, and I would say at that time I was very, I don't want to, maybe stubborn, maybe headstrong. Maybe I didn't have a full understanding of what I was studying. So I may have taken stances very early that were um just very strong, and it caused a rift, between my mother and I, and also my father's mother as well.
Can you
And
name some of the Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
and I was gonna say, when it came to Jesus, because at that time it was like, well, Jesus didn't exist and I don't believe in him. And so when you say something like that to very religious people, or people who have leaned on that concept for so long, it's jarring to them. And in my understanding now, I would not say that. I would not say it in the same way, but at the time I did. I was very pro-black, which I always will be, but I had a militant side to myself where, I don't know if you're familiar with Dead Prez. They're a music group. I was very RBG, red, black, green, all day, revolutionary but gangster. Like, it was, yeah, that's how I was. So that's how that part came in. And
Yeah.
then it was funny because my mother, who had been divorced since I was a little girl, and barely had any boyfriends my whole life, at 19, 20, she met and fell in love with a white man. So now she actually didn't want to tell me because of my militancy. But for me, I already knew that she had made so many sacrifices. I knew if she liked him, it wasn't about me, So I was like, you know, how could I be upset about that? If you're feeling seen, if you're feeling loved and cherished, I could never be upset about that. Now, I always kept like one eye open, if you know what I mean, with him, but he loved my mom. He loved my mom. So, um yeah.
I wanted to go back a little bit when you said that you wouldn't say now about Jesus the things that you said before about Jesus. And I want to ask you, Akua, is that because you don't believe that or because you don't want to hurt people with the truth? Like, what do
Great
you actually
question.
believe is true?
What I believe is true is that Christianity has always been originally ours as far as the concept of the Trinity. So I feel like I have integrated the belief of Jesus in the fact that the Christ principle has always existed. It may not have existed exactly in the way that it is presented now, but I feel like the concept, the overarching oneness of it is that I believe Christianity was always ours, and that how can I say it? I'm trying to put it into the right words. Um, and I guess I would say that I would never down anyone for what they believe. It's not, if someone believes in Jesus and practices that and that helps them, then I'm happy for you. That's what works for you now, and that's okay. That's where you are on your journey. Um and for lack of better words, that's what I believe.
Um, okay, so I would like to go back to this time period that you were speaking about with um the dead prayers and the readings and the African studies. And I want to ask which one is the chicken and which one is the egg? Did the religious study and the indigenous practices come before the African study and the revolutionary rhetoric, or did the rhetoric come first and then through that the indigenous study?
The rhetoric came first, the African studies came first,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then the spirituality.
And why do you think it came in that order? Like, what was it that the rhetoric opened up, I guess, for you, or pushed you away from when it came to the religiosity that you had grown up in? What was it that it included that either made it easy for you to embrace one or made it easy for you to push away from the other? What was it?
I think maybe it could have been just um I guess the blackness of it all, just being able to focus on um thoughts and ideas and principles, um, and knowledge that came from us that
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily focused on as I was growing up.
Right.
I wanted more connection. I wanted to I wanted to feel my roots more. And I
Mm-hmm.
just naturally gravitated toward the African side.
Right.
I was seeking some type of connection, a belonging of, okay, where do I really come from? Because I know that, just being in church does not give you necessarily your roots. Now it's a part of the lineage. It's most definitely a part of the lineage because I know, especially on my father's side, they've been practicing Christianity for
Mm-hmm.
generations.
Mhm,
but
mhm.
what about what came before that? So that's
Right.
the African centeredness gave me a face. It kind of gave me a foundation of where to start. It gave me a school of thought that I could reach back to and pull from.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. What did you lose when you left Christianity, and what did you gain when you chose, African-centered spirituality and indigenous practices?
Ooh, I would say leaving Christianity or transitioning from Christianity. I think I lost maybe somewhat of a connection point when it comes to my immediate family
Mm,
because of me kind of separated myself somewhat. It made them look at me differently. It made and it still does, in some ways. Um, but with the tradition, with the traditional practices, I feel like I've gained almost everything.
mhm.
Um, I've gained more purpose. Um, I've gained more insight into who I am as a woman and as even a priestess in my own right. I've gained so much, I think, wisdom and just insight when it comes to intuition. I feel like I've gained an ancestral thread to where, my ancestors recognize me in a sense. And so, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I actually am I'm curious about, like, if you had to go back to your okay, if you had to go back to your former self, your Christian self, and say something to her about spirit or spirituality, what would you really be saying to that version of you that was still uh in it?
Hmm. I would tell myself um to pay attention to my dreams. Um I would tell myself to be patient. I would tell myself um to study, to learn. Um and I'm thinking of something I would say in regards to my family. I would probably tell her to, I don't know, maybe not be so militant per se. It's almost like, because looking back now, I feel like it would have been important for me not to continue to conform,
Mhm.
but to maybe contain it a little bit more. Because maybe
Mhm.
when we first learn things, we're excited. We want to tell everybody. We want to, push our newfound information out.
Right.
But at that time, it wasn't really a benefit necessarily for me to do that when it comes to my family. But
Mhm.
so yeah, I would tell her to be patient, to listen to her dreams, to trust herself, um, and yeah, kind of go from there.
Perfect. Perfect. I feel like it's such a sincere thing to acknowledge, where we are when we first hear something and it's like, whoa, this is necessary. Everybody I love needs to be on board. We all need to know this. This is very important. Um, but in the same breath, also wanting to respect other people's journey and where they are in their spiritual walk and etc. If I can ask you very frankly, what, if any, damage do you feel like Christianity does or has done
Hmm.
in the face of blackness? Because what I'm hearing, it sounds like you went through a journey, and the journey sounds more like awakening to yourself as a black woman, and then through that awakening in blackness, then indigenous practices. And so, if this is the anecdote to Christianity, then what do you feel like Christianity, what harm, if any, do you feel like Christianity has done in the face of blackness?
Um, I think Christianity, the way it is, has been forced for so many generations, has cut us off from our indigenous practices. It's deemed everything outside of Christianity evil, which has cut us off from so much wisdom that could have been or could be implemented right now in our daily walk. So it has done a lot of damage because it's disconnected us from certain aspects of our roots. And whew, it's been forced, it's been beaten into us. um we have been, over generations, taught to forget where we come from. We're taught to look back at, what our great however many grandparents practiced, and it's given so many of us a superiority complex where we're looking down at people, and we feel like, if these people don't believe exactly as we believe, that they are wrong. And that's just not the case. So in a lot of ways, it has separated us more than it's brought us together.
And
And
do you feel like there are times where you can look back in your childhood and see those impacts? Like, how did that translate? Like, how did that actually show up? The forced, portion of it, or the disconnection that you speak of. Tell me how that translated in your real, childhood experience. What did that look like?
um I think more so as a child, I didn't necessarily feel that it was forced. It's just more once I started thinking outside of the box, where it was almost like an automatic condemnation, you know, um, that came. And I'm more so, when I think about that, I think about the relationship I had with my mother, where it was just, I don't understand you. What you're doing is not right. It's wrong. And it hurt our relationship, in a lot of ways. And if she could have been a bit more open-minded, where we could really just talk about it more openly, it would have been so much more beneficial for she and I. But she couldn't. She didn't have the capacity for it.
And so many of us who have been indoctrinated, you know, don't really have that capacity. It's very common to observe that level of structure, and I'm sorry for that. I'm very sorry for that. Like that, it can be very traumatic because it is hurtful. And I'm sorry for that. Definitely sorry for that. What are you feeling as you talk about this? Like what what was it that was running through your mind either now or even in the past when she would call you wrong or
Um, it's I don't even know if I have the words. It's because she's not here anymore
oh, sorry.
for us to work through that, you know?
Yeah.
And so even now, um, you know, she passed in 2018. So
Mhm.
I'm older now. I have more patience now. I have more understanding to where I could have, led a conversation without getting frustrated or maybe shutting down, but it's not possible now. So I don't know. It's just um so many things, so many judgments were made on her part because of what I practiced. And um so yeah, there's pain. There's pain there.
Yeah, yeah. And
Mhm.
I'm sorry for that. I'm definitely sorry for that. It's um even going through the process of talking about it, you know, can feel like it's opening a wound. And thank you for being willing to sit down and do this interview and share your truth, because a lot of people have experienced that judgment, that resistance. And I guess my question is, in the face of all that, what was it that kept you going towards these new practices? Why didn't you abandon them? Like, what was it that drew you over there and kept you over there?
What was it? I'm not sure exactly what it was. It was, I think, in a grand type of concept, it was just a destiny. It was
Mm-hmm.
something that was had always been meant for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um and because I never thought to go back or turn away from it completely. Even
Mm-hmm.
even with the discord, the confusion, the judgment, I never once thought that I'm just gonna not do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I never I never thought that. So I think it was honestly just something that was meant for me. I feel like of course I've been guided this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's not just about me, it's about my children, and it's about, you know, the community that I am in having
Mm-hmm.
somewhat of an example. Now, I'm not the ultimate example, but just somewhat of an example, somewhat of something different.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Well, Akua, I'm just curious. I'm gonna wrap us up here so I don't just drag you on into the rest of Sunday.
Mhm.
But is there anything else that you think is really important to share about this transitional journey that you've made from growing up Christian, with a Catholic and a Baptist set of parents now being an EFI and really holding indigenous technology and spirituality as your centerpiece?
Um, can you repeat the question? Were you saying, is there anything
Is
else
there
I would like to share?
Yes, correct. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your transition from growing up in Christianity with a Catholic and Baptist parent to transitioning into Ifa and ancestral veneration as your spiritual centerpiece?
Um, well, what I was gonna say was that I automatically began with the African centeredness.
Mhm.
If I could go back, I would still reach toward the Panamanian side because I
Okay.
did not um, dive as deep maybe as I could have, or maybe as deep as I will in the future, hopefully. I didn't even realize I didn't look up the meaning of my name until later,
Mm,
but I was so ready
mhm,
to change it.
mhm.
So
What is your name?
my birth name is Elena, and it means shining bright light.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. Yeah.
So, I would just say I would say if I had to give maybe any advice to, I would say to look into both sides or all sides, not just the maternal side, not just the paternal, but both, as if one is wants to come into more understanding of self. And I would also say to not be afraid, especially if one is in Christianity or whatever type of religion, um, to not be afraid if you're drawn to other aspects, other maybe traditions. I
Right.
spoke with a gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and uh, he was referred to me by one of my former mentees because I mentor uh,
Mhm.
mostly women. But my sister said, "Oh, I have my friend who's interested. Can I give him your number?" I said, "Sure." So we talked, and he is a religious person, and
Mhm.
he was very interested, but he noticed himself that he was afraid.
Mm,
And I said, "I love how aware you are. And I love that you can even speak and say that you are afraid.
mhm.
And, and I understand that. And it's okay, you know. Um, and you don't have to necessarily force yourself. You don't have to rush, but don't let your fear stop you from tapping into who you are, or
Okay.
from stepping out of a comfort zone. Don't let fear stop you, because you never know what you can find out. And these indigenous practices, they're not evil. I think some people can try to use them in an evil way, but they are inherently not evil.
Mhm.
And so that's what I would say.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. I appreciate you taking your time and just gracing us with this very useful and insightful narrative of your spiritual evolution. Thank you so much. And I'm going to reserve the right to follow up with you and do a follow up interview if necessary, because this has
Yes.
been a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me. It's been a pleasure. And I'm
Thank,
available. I'm here whatever you need.
thank you. So I'm going to stop the
Okay.
recording and I'm gonna tell you thank you again because that was great. Um, I don't even know how you found my thesis post, but I'm so glad that you did because that was great.